Let's take away the conversations from South Africa as we head to Burkina Faso. Next week, they'll begin the process to select a transitional president ahead of elections following a coup by disaffected military officers against the ruling junta. According to Captain Ibrahim Traore, who of course took power a week ago. A national meeting will be convened on the 14th and 15th of October. Recall that Traore was declared president on Wednesday after a two-day standoff with Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, who seized power in January.
Traore was at the head of a corps of disgruntled junior officers, basically. But there were rumors just a few days later of discussions among some other army generals on potentially replacing him. Demonstrators gathered in the capital of Burkina Faso on Thursday to show their support for Traore amid rumors of internal divisions in the army. Calm has generally returned to the streets of Ouagadougou since last Friday's coup and the turbulent weekend that followed.
I think that's a good angle, a good side to it, the fact that calm has seemingly returned. And this, of course, we will not stop talking about the fact that we're seeing a lot of coups happening on the continent and wondering what the impact of this would be on the continent's democracy. I was watching an interview and someone said, if there is another successful or almost successful coup attempt on the continent, that he worries that the fabric of democracy as we know it will be completely lost. Yep. Because it seems that what we see a lot of times is another form of copycat coups. It happens here, it's repeated here. We're seeing like repetitions happening in different parts of the continent. And we wonder really what exactly is this democracy that we speak about, how effective is it? And it's a coup within a coup. One coup takes over from another coup, and the core of the issues still are not being addressed.
So that one is is an established fact. That when people overthrow a government, a lot of times they become worse than the government that they took over from. They blame that government for numerous atrocities, but eventually take over power and realize that they don't know what to do with it. They just wanted power. So with regards to Burkina Faso story, it's a good thing, that so early, because normally when you hear about coups, it takes months before they even agree on the transitional government or agree on elections. Some of them even take 2 years, 3 years. But this one has, between the last couple of weeks, decided that they were going to put for a transitional government pretty fast. So that's a good thing.
That's a good one.
But one thing that I would always point out with stories like this is, when you see these things play out, a lot of times there are the big players behind the scenes that make these things happen that aren't necessarily in the interest of the Burkinabe people. It's really about, it's a power play, right? If you remember when we had this conversation sometime last week, there were people mentioning France and mentioning Russia and mentioning other countries. There is a power play. There is something that is going on behind the scenes. There's people who, because Traore didn't wake up bored one random Tuesday morning and decide, what am I going to do today? I'm going to do a coup. It doesn't happen like that. There is something behind the scenes that says, this is what we're trying to achieve and this is what we should do. So nobody knows who is behind some of all of this. But eventually, I would always hope that it is going to benefit the people of Burkina Faso. A lot of times it doesn't. It is just because one person or a group of people, some financiers here, are trying to hold on to power. And, something has been disrupted here by this school. And so cool, they will have to then do a counter coup. They will fund it if they have to, to ensure that people in their favor, they're called puppets. And these puppets exist in different countries around the world, not just in Africa. Different small countries here and there around the world. They are puppet regimes that, basically just do the bidding of the major power.
Before this coup actually was executed, there were speculations or allegations of Russia being involved. There were talks about the Russian mercenaries and their role in potentially accelerating this coup. This was even before the coup had happened. There were reports of this that hit the media. But of course, like we always say, Africa must wake up. African leaders must do better. We want to see more African countries liberated, but not being subjected to these undue external influences. We just want to see the lives really better for Africans rather.